everyone, welcome back to Fanboy TV South by Southwest Live. I'm Gavin, joined by
Courtney.
And we have, probably it's safe to say, one of the most messed up, crazy, unbelievable documentaries we have ever seen, and we've been doing this for 5 years. So that says something. We are joined by
Erin Carr.
All right, so her documentary is called Mommy, Dead, and Dearest. So for people who don't know, which is most of you, tell them what the movie's about.
Of course, and I love that introduction. I feel very similarly. So basically, it is a film about a young woman who is in a wheelchair for most of her life. And when she's about 23 years old, she decides she wants to meet a boyfriend. And she goes online, she meets him, and unfortunately, her mother, who she's so close with, says, you shouldn't be dating. And something really terrible and scary happens to her mother, but there was a very good reason for it.
So she made that sound very sane because
This is anything but sane.
Here's why. The girl didn't need to be in a wheelchair. That's just the only thing we're going to tell you. Like, it was so bizarre how this whole thing played out. One, you had a brilliant way of telling it. Like Courtney was telling you, you get a little more, then you get detailed, and a little more, and then you see her walking, you're like, whoa, am I watching the same movie? Like, literally, it was the weirdest thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just jumping right in. Technology overall plays a big role in this. And I've noticed that's something that you actually love talking about in some of your other stuff. And in this case, it's such a big part of the story simply because of how everything happens to transpire. Just, how deep did that rabbit hole go? And
that rabbit hole was literally endless. I was actually able to look at sort of all of the Facebook messages between her and her co-conspirator and her boyfriend. It was 110,000 pages of Facebook documents.
Oh, God.
Her whole life took place online. Like, basically, for viewers watching this is a young woman who didn't go to school because her mom said she was mentally incapacitated. So all she did was watch Disney films and go on Facebook. Imagine what would happen if that is the only thing you ever had sort of experience with. And it's just, I like to sort of, when I talk with Gypsy, I need to understand that, like, yes, something serious happened and murder is never okay, but I didn't grow up in the same reality. She literally grew up in a different reality.
And that's the saddest thing. One of the things that really pounds home in this film is they keep saying the system failed her. Like, this is how destructive this movie is. And Phil was CPS, I made him watch it. He's like, I don't understand how the system failed her this bad. Like, it is insane.
Because I'm going to explain how the system failed her that hard. Her mother was just that. I'm going to say it straight up. Her mother was just that crazy.
Such a genius, though.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
genius.
The thing is, like, it's there is nobody like Dee Dee Blanchard. The depth to which she perpetuated this hoax. I mean, you go into the evidence. There's detailed binders explaining, like, what the medication is, what she's trying to tell the doctors. Like, this was her life's work, and ultimately her sort of
her way of essentially funding her way of life.
Which, when you showed the part with the cancer survivor and they were on stage, I was like, oh, they're going to hell. Oh. Like, that's the first thought I had.
Yeah.
They are going straight to hell there.
And I mean, that rabbit hole itself goes kind of deep because Dee Dee Blanchard's mother was kind of not the best person to hang around either. And there's kind of some suspicion there that when her mother died, that she may have had something to do with it, right? Is that what okay, yes. I'm remembering that right. And so it's just watching this progress. How hard was it not to feel for Gypsy Rose? Like, to sympathize with her for that one?
I mean, I think it's okay to empathize with her.
Yeah.
I think that's I'm hoping so much that that your viewers end up watching the film. But I cared very deeply about Gypsy and what happened to her. But that didn't mean it was going to be a puff piece or a piece of advocacy or was going to let anybody off on murdering someone. Because the thing is, you can run away. You can do certain things, but that is just not what happened here.
Yeah. And now, kind of cycling back, essentially what happened with Gypsy Rose is that her mother had something called Munchausen by proxy, which is an insidious piece of psychological miasma, essentially. Munchausen by proxy essentially means that you treat your child or someone in your care like they're the sickest dog on earth, and you want all that sympathy for it. I'm in no way a psychologist, but psychology is kind of, my sister and I would love talking about it. She's in school for psychology, and the moment she listed all, like, started listing the diseases that Gypsy Rose had, I'm like, there's something wrong with the mother here. And then being able to call that was just like, oh
well,
my God.
when they showed the picture of the medicine closet, I was like, okay, there's something definitely wrong here. And I mean, and when she died and nobody cared, they wanted to just flush her ashes. I was like, okay, I don't understand this woman or her situation. I was always wondering why the dad didn't step in and do more. But just listen to the stories of this woman. For you, sitting across from Gypsy and hearing her tell this story, what was it like? Because I'm afraid, because she was raised in that in her mind, some part of her is manipulative. And she knows what she's doing now, because she's seen the repercussions and she's learned. So listen to her talk. What was that like, just sitting in the room with her and just not knowing?
I mean, first off, I was so thrilled to be in that room. When you make true crime stories, access is so hard. And, like, wardens and sheriffs, they don't want you filming in there. So I really, like, you know, we were setting up, and I was like, oh, my God, this is really going to happen. I've spent so much time talking to this woman. And then I got to meet her, and she's just she has a little girl voice, and she was very nervous. And, you know, she wasn't actually able to shower because the hot water was off in the prison that she was at. And so she just was in this totally vulnerable state. And then I had to be like, so, why did you murder your mom? Like,
well,
it just, like, it was hardball, and it was difficult, but, like, I think that she knew I was coming from a place of empathy. And you talked a little bit about why didn't her dad do anything. I think it goes back to your point, like, the thing is, we don't know anybody like Dee Dee Blanchard. We don't know,
Nobody does.
you know, like, I mean, hopefully not, like, you know, but I think that he didn't know what to do. He was living in a different state. This is like, it was the perfect crime until it wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hearing him talk at some points, and his wife, they obviously both care deeply for Gypsy Rose. From what it sounded like is that his hands were essentially tied because she limited access for Dee Dee limited access, and what Dee Dee did say was, like, at best a half truth, even to Gypsy Rose herself.
It was compulsive lies.
Yeah,
just like there's no way around it. It was compulsive lying. Excuse me, Gypsy did not know how old she was. She thought she was 17 years old. She was 23 at the time.
Yeah.
You know, there's just, I think you grow up next to somebody your whole life and they're telling you lies. You don't know what is truth and what is fiction.
And here's another thing that kept popping up. This is very, very twisted Disney. She thought she was living a Disney fairy tale at some points.
Yeah, when she was talking about how Tangled was her favorite movie and the mom and died at the end and was saved, I was like, that's really kind of depressing that this is how she thinks her life is supposed to be. Because, one, she didn't push anybody out the window. Two, I mean, that's not reality. But you're right. As you said earlier, that's all she had. So my question for you is, were you going to try to approach the boyfriend at all? Or did they say, like, no, that's just not happening?
Of course, I think it's really important in any sort of journalistic endeavor that you approach the story from all sides, and we approach the prosecution and the defense. And so we wrote a letter, and this was with my co-producer Allison Byrne. We wrote Nicholas Godejohn a letter and saying, you know, we'd really like to speak with you. And one day the mail comes back, and it has been returned unopened. He was completely and totally radio silent on speaking with us, and the same thing with his lawyer. And, you know, to be totally honest, I think that the interrogation footage in the film, it speaks for him to a certain extent. Like, you know, I have empathy for him, too. He is a severely mentally ill person. And these two bad narratives collided, as Michelle Dean in the piece talks about. Yeah, it's crazy.
And that's another thing that gets me, is that here you have two very severely mentally incapacitated people. I'm not going to even say mentally ill in Gypsy's
but
case.
Gypsy is not. She is complete. Like, the thing is, she is smart. She's articulate. She's intuitive. And you brought up, like, manipulation. Like, did I ever feel like I was potentially being manipulated? Like, everyone is always manipulating us. Like that is the point of it. Like
yeah.
I am seeing what you want from me. You're seeing what I want from you.
Yeah.
It's just about sort of like, is it too much? Is it lying? Is she using a baby girl voice just to speak to me? Like, you know, these are all
Or is
sort
it
of
just
lines.
how she's used to speaking because that's how she was kept.
Right.
Yeah.
Caroline.
So amazing, amazing film. Where can people find out more about it online?
Of course. So we have a website called Mommy, Dead, and Dearest .com, and it's going to be on HBO. I'm so grateful to Sheila Nevins and Sarah Bernstein at HBO who picked up the piece, and it is airing the day after Mother's Day.
So celebrate your mom while you can, because afterwards you'll be like, oh wow, I got real lucky. I really love my mom.
Yeah,
I got done
that's
watching
the
this and
point.
I'm like, I'm sitting there at midnight finishing this piece because I had to take breathers throughout this.
She
'cause-
was messaging me the whole time.
Yeah.
Who was that?
It was intense.
Aw.
And I'm like, this is midnight. I want to call my mom and just go,
I love
like,
you,
I
Mom.
love you. And I didn't because she had work at like 4 a.m. the next day. I'm like, I'm not going to do that to you.
So yeah, I got all the messages. I've watched. I'm in the second viewing right now. Trust me, I know.
Oh, he got front of it. 'Cause I'm
So-
like, oh my God.
Have fun at South by Southwest. I can't wait to see how people react to this film
Yes.
because literally we were, what is going on?
Amazing.
Out of all the ones, this is probably on my must-watch list.
Definitely
I
must
cannot
watch.
wait for
Love
it to
it.
come
All right,
out.
so we'll be back right after this with more South by Southwest Fanboy TV Live. Don't go anywhere.